have some breaking news for you in our world lead now. New photos the U.S. government says backs up its claim Iran is responsible for the attack on 2 oil tankers in international water. This, as Iran announces, it is now stockpiling low-grade uranium, and in just 10 days it will pass the limit that had been allowed under the Iran nuclear deal. CNN's Barbara Starr is at the Pentagon for us right now. Barbara, what are officials saying these new photographs show?
Well, Jake, the fact that we're even seeing them is extraordinary because these are declassified just a short time ago, high-resolution imagery. The Pentagon doesn't like to show how much they can really accomplish with imagery, how much they can see, but because there is so much public doubt about this, because there is so much public concern, they have really made an effort here to show these images, to show the world as much as they know at this point. Newly declassified images of what the Pentagon says was an Iranian attack on 2 oil tankers last week. One extraordinarily clear image taken by a U.S. Navy helicopter overhead shows an Iranian Revolutionary Guard boat moments after those on board removed an unexploded mine from one tanker, according to the Pentagon. More images of the leftover mine, and a hole in the hull from additional blasts. The Pentagon acknowledged 2 things. They are not sure all the damage was caused by mines, and the case against the Iranians still will have its doubters.
We have not stepped
Iran's ambassador with a scary prediction today about a possible clash with the U.S.
Unfortunately, we are heading towards a confrontation, which is very serious for everybody in the region.
In an interview with CNN's Christian Amanpour, the ambassador also claiming Iran isn't responsible for the attack that left 2 oil tankers damaged last week.
I don't know about the strategy of the U.S. on this, but I am sure that this is a scenario that some people are very forcefully working on it, that they would drag the United States into a confrontation.
President Trump's national security team now discussing sending more military force to the region.
The United States is considering a full range of options. We briefed the president a couple of times. We'll continue to keep him updated. We are confident that we can take a set of actions that can restore deterrence, which is our mission set.
A decision could be made soon that will send additional U.S. warships, fighter jets, and Patriot missile defenses.
We obviously need to make contingency plans should the situation deteriorate.
Iran's response to the escalating tension, it will bust through a limit in the nuclear deal on how much low-grade uranium it can have for non-weapons purposes.
It is a matter of only hours and not even days.
Iran hopes the threat will break Europe's will to go along with tough U.S. economic sanctions imposed after President Trump broke from the nuclear deal.
It's a far cry from the 90% enrichment rate that you would need for a bomb. But it is a very strong signal from Tehran that the deal could be put under some pressure.
Look, the Pentagon knows there will always be doubters about whether Iran was really behind all of this, but there are other problems to look at when it comes to Iran's weapons. Right now, the Pentagon says Iranian missiles are getting better, improved guidance, improved targeting, improved distance, much more able to target in the Middle East. Jake?
All right, Barbara Starr at the Pentagon, thanks so much. Joining me now, former CIA counterterrorism official Phil Mudd and Washington Post columnist Jason Rezaian, who was Tehran bureau chief for the Washington Post and, of course, imprisoned in Iran for 544 days on those trumped-up charges. Great to have you. Thanks for being here. Do these new photographs prove anything? What would you say if you were a European diplomat trying to figure out what to do here?
2 questions. Do they prove anything? Not to me. I'd have 100 other intel questions. For example, how common are these boats out there? How confident are we know what's on that boat? For example, mines. I think what you're seeing, though, from the Europeans isn't a question about intelligence. It's a question about trust. It's a question about reliability. As soon as they say, yeah, you're right, the Americans, they're on the hook to say, and now we'll get in the boat and determine what we're going to do with you. And it's in an age where the president's comments about Europe and NATO have not been positive. If I were the Europeans, I'd say, nice photos. I don't believe it yet.
And the skepticism, to me, it feels like it's rooted in a few things. One, a real reluctance for there to be any sort of military confrontation. 2, the legacy of the war in Iraq. And 3, as you say, and you're being polite about it, I mean, President Trump does not have the strongest track record when it comes to European allies, and frankly, when it comes to the truth.
Not at all. And I think we have to also go back to the nuclear deal, the JCPOA, which President Trump decided to pull out of about a year ago. By all indications, the deal was working for what it was set up to do. And it's not as though these skirmishes are anything new. I mean, this is a incremental building up of tension that we've seen over the past year. And I think it's just going to continue.
Do you think, Jason, that the Iranians or some Iranian-affiliated organization had anything to do with these incidents?
I think it's completely possible. But I think that there was a time not that long ago that if the United States came forward and said this was Iran, most of our allies in the world would jump on board with that. And that's not happening this time.
And take a listen to Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, how he thinks the U.S. should respond to Iran allegedly attacking these 2 oil tankers.
These unprovoked attacks on commercial shipping warrant a retaliatory military strike.
They warrant a retaliatory military strike. And Tom Cotton, Senator Cotton, is very close with President Trump.
That's nuts. Let me give you a few technical reasons why. Number one, who are you going to line up to build a coalition if you want to have a military strike? Who's going to be with you? The French, the British, and others in Europe who are right now trying to determine whether even to side with us on sanctions? First, we don't have anybody with us except those superpowers like the United Arab Emirates and the Saudis. And the second is something you learn time and time again in this game. If you're going to stage some sort of military action, what is the response going to be, and what's your end game? If you don't want war and you conduct an active war, then you better be ready to go down that path. I don't know where he thinks we're going to end up if we take a shot.
The president is saying that all options are on the table, including sending more troops to the region.
Well, I think that's probably what he'll do first. But ultimately, the idea that we'd start lobbing bombs at nuclear sites or at Tehran or at the Persian Gulf, like Phil says, is absolutely nuts. And I think that there's a long way between a couple of skirmishes in the Gulf regarding tankers that were non-lethal, that nobody died in these attacks, that we'd start attacking Iran in any kind of military campaigns.
How trigger-happy do you think the Iranians are?
Well, I think that they're looking at this situation. They've been stealing for this fight for a long time, probably preparing for it for at least the past year since we pulled out of the deal, and have various options ready for them, including these asymmetrical things that we're already seeing in the Gulf.
Is there any sort of United States military response that wouldn't lead to a huge war? I mean, obviously, Iran doesn't want to have an all-out war with the United States, but there might be more, and I'm not advocating for them, and I don't think they'd be good, but obviously people who think about these things think about more limited military engagement.
Sure, there's one that would be on the table, and I suspect is already being discussed, is about how you ensure that ships that are going through the Gulf are protected not just by the United States, but by other players. For example, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Russians. The problem with these other players, Chinese and Russians in particular, is they don't trust the Americans either. So you could talk about things like securing oil shipping lanes, but you got to have people sign up. And the people who want to sign up with big ships, they are looking at us saying, what are you guys going to do?
When you look at the picture, what does it tell you in terms of what the U.S. intelligence capabilities are in terms of getting this information? Because that's one of the reasons why the Pentagon and others were reluctant to release any sort of high-grade photograph.
The picture tells me more about public diplomacy than it does about intelligence. What you're trying to do is to prove to the world that what you're saying is accurate. My question would be something they never released. Do we have communications? In the intelligence world, communications, that is the Iranian Navy, for example, are far more sensitive than pictures. Do we have residue from the bomb that tells us what kind of bomb, what kind of mine was used? I suspect there's a lot more intelligence that they have. This was released because it's a visual.
Jason Rezaian, Phil Mudd, thank you so much. Appreciate your expertise, both of you. Coming up, a distinct